Have you ever pondered this? We can connect across oceans from our own beds, yet we are facing a literal loneliness epidemic. The more our awareness grows, the darker and more isolating the world seems to become. Some even wander the night's shadows, waiting for whispers of the long gone just to find a tangible shred of memory in the universe. My name is Dakota, friends, and I'm not here to prove the supernatural is real or to tell you how to live. I am here to offer a wake-up call. I've witnessed fascinating things, but instead of grasping at threads, asking if ghosts or UFOs are out there, maybe the question we should be asking is, are we truly unknown?
Good morning, good evening, good night, happy, merry, whatever the time is for you listening to this show. I hope that being that you have found yourself on this particular episode, that you have decided to continue on this journey, maybe because you wanted to hear more of what I had to say, more details about some of the incidents that I barely touched upon, because like I said with my therapist, everything going on with Dakota is always a novel, never really a pamphlet. But inevitably that sort of backs into the point of this story, right? The point of this show. Pointing out that maybe, just maybe, we don't actually know each other. We don't actually know the people we love, their hopes, their fears, their desires, their beliefs. And quite frankly, anytime stories like that get to be brought up in modern conversation, it always seems to end up in these heavy, heavy debates that almost tear people apart. Simply because maybe the story was just a little too intense. Maybe the person never had certain experiences like that, so they fall under this assumption that everyone else's life is probably going to be at least somewhat similar to their own. But when in reality, it is so, so different. And I cannot count the amount of times that was the sole argument against some of my more exotic tales. That just because that person wasn't able to achieve this, that person didn't see a UFO, they didn't get to go into Hollywood, they didn't trade business, that somehow I was some special being with special access that allowed me to achieve a lot of things that I once considered my dreams. Notice my wording there, once. Now, do I like creating, exploring? Absolutely. I would love to have a life where I just simply go explore. Maybe make a little content about it, make some money from all that, and just make it a self-lubricating cycle. Something that I could feel proud of, feel like it is my own. But more often than not, that requires sacrificing something. And if it was just me having to sacrifice certain details, the certain nuances of these stories I tell, that would be one thing. But it seems like we go to sacrifice who we truly are as a person, and maybe we're going into these sacrifices because we're not exactly sure who we are or what certain events in life truly mean for us. For this episode, if you hadn't noticed by the title, I wanted to share a little bit more detail about one of the most personal stories I've been a part of, that I can visibly share and have shared over time in my efforts to try to understand. And that is the story of Olivia Hope. To recap, for those of you in the audience, Olivia was the name I gave to a little girl who appeared to me in a vision at a time where I made an attempt at my own life. And I guess before I continue any further, for those of you who may be struggling, who may be triggered by such topics, I want you to know that you are not alone. And in the link of this episode, you will find a resource document that is accessible completely free online, compiled by my company, Bald and Bonkers Network LLC, of an international resource and hotline registry for every single country on Earth. And this exact document is to be released as a physical book in stores all over the world. So please do check that out, and if the topic of this show goes to trigger you in any way, shape, or form, I truly do apologize. But I refuse to censor the graphic details because we must truly understand the dark in order to bring ourselves into light. Wouldn't you agree? The story of Olivia Hope. I'm not here to convince you that she is a real being. I am merely here for this episode going to share the saga of what I ultimately dubbed the Olivia paradox. Because even now, personally, I cannot deny the fact that things were just simply too weird to completely discount her as being a pure hallucination. Unless there's some grand cosmic thing that allowed for that hallucination to somehow take life, to take form in some way, rather, and assist 13 other people who were completely unaware of her existence in the first place. So to go back to recap, now that we've gotten all that out of the way, Olivia Hope was the name of the little girl I gave to this little girl after a vision in which she saved my life. And in this vision, the reason why this appearance, aside from the sheer shock value of the entire thing, the reason why this came to me is not necessarily that she showed up, it's because of what she said. What she said to me in that moment. Daddy, please don't do it. The level of guilt that I felt in my stomach, even as I'm saying it to this day, I still feel it residually. The sheer shock of potentially harming an innocent child, especially one that was maybe somehow my own. It was enough of a wake-up call for me to pull out of that state, feel just enough overwhelming confusion about what I just saw, that the only thing that made sense in the moment was for me to go to bed, sleep off the night, and do my best to act like it never happened, that I did not just try to end my own life. But naturally, we wouldn't be here if I could leave it alone now, could I? So over time, like I said, as I grew up, went through school, started getting involved in ghost hunting, this little girl kept appearing like she was some sort of guardian angel. Just seeing this presence would give me just enough of a mood boost to get through whatever dark episode I was going through. And even on one of the worst days of my life, where the man who was essentially my dad, a surrogate father figure in my life, because my actual father was an absolute piece of work who, hopefully never gets out of prison. That is the politest way I know to put it. The day when my grandfather passed away, and he seemingly saw this little girl, that was the day it solidified that maybe, just maybe, there was something truly spectacular taking place. And that's going to be a completely separate episode with some guests, hopefully, along the way to share their side of things. About how much of alleged psychic phenomenon is either triggered or misdiagnosed from serious mental health concerns. And I say this because often there are two questions that have persisted that in some way I cannot fully rule out from those who are more skeptical of this encounter. One of the first alternate explanations, and even some of my best friends I have known since childhood have even pondered this possibility. And the first one, and this first possibility, was that naturally, they say the human mind, in an absolute panicked survival state, trying to do everything it can to be able to live another day, somehow materialized this vision to get my attention just enough to shake my focus, to make me feel some purpose in life, to become a better man, to be able to try to overcome everything that endured. That Olivia was nothing more than a survival mechanism that my mind held on to because it knew somehow that one of the biggest things that rattles me to this day is if an innocent child is hurt. So naturally you can imagine someone with my protective patterns, and believe me, there's plenty of loves in my life who can validate that sometimes those patterns got to be a little bit too intense. And Miss Olivia may as well have been the source of some of them, as I will explain here soon. When it comes to this particular argument, one thing I've always tried to say is, I was 12 when this happened. though it was not biologically impossible for me to have children because I did blossom early with puberty. That was not necessarily the source of why I got to be so big so quickly. There was always a bit of a genetic disposition where I was always kind of tall, but puberty just finished the job. I was 12 years old. What 12-year-old boy, particularly, is thinking about having kids? What 12-year-old boy would naturally resort to that form of mental imagery in their subconscious mind to try to protect themselves from making the ultimate final act? How about a 12-year-old boy who spent most of his life fearing because he constantly heard it from the adults in his life that he was supposed to trust, his family, the family that was left, and he was just like his father. Like I said in the previous episode, anybody who's dealt with separated parents, divorced parents, parents who were never married, and parents who just flat out couldn't grow up and maintain some semblance of peace for the kids' sake. There was probably some harsh comparisons when the parent got frustrated where they would say to the child, "Oh, you're just like your father. Oh, you're just like your mother." 9 times out of 10, looking back, you could probably brush that off as nothing more than a frustrated, likely single or divorced parent just taking their frustrations out on their kid, not really taking into consideration exactly how those words may land. And for situations where that is simply the case, you can probably forgive them. But in my case, those remarks often continue even when the sexual assault allegations my father had against involving one of my younger sisters, being that I still was thrown that remark, that stung. And yeah, I knew my father wasn't exactly a good guy. I had heard stories about the things he did. There was, just to give you one example, there was one story I've heard time and time again where my stepmother was in the hospital delivering one of my younger sisters, the same younger sister who would be found exchanging sexual messages with our father when she was maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, while he was deployed over in Iraq and soon to come home. See, this particular sister of mine, I'm not going to say her name, she was a Father's Day baby. And naturally, fathers, that's one day you probably feel pretty proud to be a papa. And naturally, one can't necessarily fault the man for making a phone call and wanting his other child to be brought to the hospital to meet his new sibling. Perfectly innocent, right? Here's the thing. As the story was told to me, again, I'm just going to be completely honest and say that I do not have much physical memory of this incident. Because, mind you, I was 2 when this sister was born. So I am heavily relying on third-party information. That particular weekend, while my mother was at work, I was staying with my maternal grandparents, which was often the arrangement. So often an arrangement that their spare bedroom was essentially my bedroom growing up. And this particular weekend, we decided to head up to the South Hills for a little camping. Mind you, this was about 1998. Even to this day, with 5G technology, those same very camping spots, they're still there to this day. You can't really get a good enough signal to operate mobile phones unless you happen to stand on certain hills within certain clearings, waving your arms around like a psycho chicken. So naturally, back in 1998, even radios, their signal was often sketchy, making emergency response quite difficult at the time, as you can imagine. So my father made the phone call to my mother, said, hey, can you bring Dakota by to the hospital to meet his sister? I want to have both of my kids here for Father's Day. Let Dakota come meet his sister. My mother said, I can't bring him by. He's up in the hills camping with his grandparents right now. And there is, obviously no cell phones. Rather than just be disappointed, grumble under his breath about his ex, and just try to enjoy the moment of new life being brought into his world, he starts beating the crap out of my stepmother while she is still in the hospital bed, still recovering from childbirth. He was effectively banned from that hospital after this incident. Just to give you a little bit clearer picture of the type of guy my father was. Naturally, I don't want to be that type of guy. Hell no. If there is any woman on this planet who I have ever accidentally made you feel uncomfortable, gave you any sort of genuine feeling that I was anywhere sort of that danger, you have my full permission to put a bullet between my eyes, because I would rather be dead than be a guy like that. So over time, with that statement still being a part of my life to this day, naturally, I had a bit of a premature fear of repeating those cycles. And for those of you curious, not that it really matters, but right now the only thing that is really might be found on my criminal record is a few speeding tickets involving a car accident I was in a few years ago. That's it. Given my father didn't exactly set a very high bar, I can say with confidence that I'm not him. Unfortunately, I inherited his hairline, but, could be worse. The second major concern about this particular incident, when you really think about it, is that over time, when it seemed less and less likely that Olivia was not just some random mental image, that there was some presence about her. Naturally, there was three technically, that came to mind about trying to understand what was going on. If I actually had a kid, as I said before, if I actually had a kid at the age of 12, somebody had some explaining to do. Secondly, if I had a kid, naturally, who's the mom? And the third, not so important question, but I was still a prepubescent boy getting interested in girls. Was she hot? And perhaps if I just left those concerns at that, if I was able to leave those concerns at that, I probably wouldn't have had so many turbulent relationships in my life. What do I mean? Well, and some of you could probably argue, if you've listened to at least the last couple of episodes, parental units have not exactly been the best models around me in life. Naturally, I want to be, if life just happens to bless me with that opportunity, I would want to be a good boyfriend, fiance, husband, and should life determine fate shall bless me with a child, I would want to be a good father. And naturally, the father, while still important in a child's life, is only a part of the puzzle. I would want to make sure Miss Olivia had a good mother. Seems innocent enough, right? But just imagine walking in my shoes, starting to date, knowing that somehow you may have witnessed time travel. And you're trying to understand, without any frame of reference, what the hell happened. You just know that you have a chance to be a good man, a good just person in the future, overcome the stress that you came about. And naturally, if a child is going to come into play, you want to make sure the mom's good too. So essentially, nearly every relationship I was in from the age of 14 on, even now, this has been a point of pressure, as my current significant other has disclosed to me, but that is a situation for us to resolve when the time is right. I found myself essentially scanning every woman I've been with, every prospective girlfriend I was talking to, from the young lady who was in my class who messaged me the night after Olivia's first appearance. She messaged me over Facebook to apologize because she was kind of mean towards me and she felt guilty about it. I speculated from her to my first girlfriend later on, to every relationship I've been in, even some young ladies who we kind of teased the idea of being together because, say one, for example, we were supposed to play a couple on screen for a shark thriller movie that ended up being canceled. Another, we talked about getting together, but she knew I had recently come off of a long distance relationship that did not end well. To quite a few young ladies who we seemed to get along great, but they expressed that due to their own either medical or personal reasons, they did not necessarily feel comfortable bringing a child into the world. That's not exactly grounds for respecting your partner's boundaries, now is it? Because even when they would go to express these things, I found myself constantly trying to psychoanalyze, trying to predict the future, count the cards, if you will. To understand, to convince myself that maybe if I just hang on just long enough, something will change and that little girl will come into my life. Now, I've always said openly that within these romantic situations, that realistically, I'm open to having a potential child, but I also understand that it takes two to tango, and tried to not necessarily make it my priority in life, because I felt that, especially seeing both of my parents who had me shortly after, or at least my mother graduated high school. My father was a high school dropout who later got his GED in order to enlist in the National Guard. Seeing the struggles that they went through, in which my own mother even described that she was, and I would honestly say this would be a good chunk of it, that she was still growing up herself at the time, dealing with the stress of an abusive ex, that she probably didn't handle things very well. And I didn't want that hanging over me, so I tried to keep the conclusion that should that time in my life where the woman I love, whoever she may be at the time, approaches me saying that she was pregnant with my baby, I would welcome that child with open arms. Now some of you may be wondering, well, Dakota, do you have any children in this life? I will say this, not to make myself sound like an asshole, but to the best of my knowledge, I do not. And once again, I would hope that if I did have a child, I should correct myself. I would hope that whoever the mother was did not necessarily feel that I was such an asshole, or felt so ashamed, or felt for whatever reason to keep that information from me. But I will admit there was a pregnancy scare. And in retrospect, even though last I heard the situation resolved itself favorably, in retrospect, I kind of wish was a pregnancy, because bringing a child in the world is still scary, but finding out you had ovarian cancer and that was what was triggering a false positive after a one-night stand with a crazy American who was vacationing through Paris at the time. You can imagine the chaos that unfolded. Yes. In my travels, yes, I did have a bit of a one-night stand with a lovely lady from Paris. We got along great. We shared a lot of stories about, being struggling entrepreneurs, trying to build our own life in a crazy world. And about 3 months after that trip, she got a hold of me fearing that she was pregnant. She took a pregnancy test and said it was positive, but she was ultimately going to the doctor just to ensure that there was nothing else wrong. In that certain circumstance, I was rattled to the core because I thought maybe, just maybe, this was it. After being told that message by Olivia, that mommy was coming soon, while I was in Paris, I thought maybe that's what she meant. A few days later, she reaches out and she tells me she heard back from the doctor. Not Olivia, this young lady I was with. She heard back from the doctor and told me that it was a false positive, that she had ovarian cancer and it was causing enough of a hormonal fluctuation to register as a positive pregnancy test. We stayed in touch for some time while she went through her treatments, and last I heard, she had found herself a new beau and she seems genuinely happy. Which I'm happy for. I really am. And if she happens to hear this, feel free to drop a line. Let's catch up. But I digress. In the first episode, I posed the common paradox of modern communication, of modern socialization, of how we all seem to carry devices in our back pockets that could connect us to nearly anybody else, anywhere in the world. Yet in that moment, how much do we truly know? The reason why I bring up this story about Olivia is because within my recent therapy ventures, something was pointed out to me. A lot of things were pointed out to me. That even if my romantic partner was open-minded to the idea of the supernatural, and this is something that I've openly joked about before, but never really gave much consideration, was that, that effectively by bringing up this story, making it so well known, that I ran the risk of nearly any relationship that I went into who naturally maybe decided to look me up before officially meeting me in person, just trying to be safe, do their due diligence and all that fun stuff, discovered what I've shared about these stories, about star wife, star family, and all this. It almost makes me sound like a crazy cult leader, saying, hey, effectively eliminating the usual, early stages of romance, awkwardness of, oh, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite bands? All that. And replacing it with, hey, I think you may be the prophesized mother of a child that saved my life when I was 12 years old. Want to get freaky? Even though I would try to dance around it. Did not sound so creepy, but inevitably that pressure causes even the most open-minded individuals to start questioning, okay, is this guy crazy? Should I continue to engage? What? Because anybody who honestly didn't question it to at least some level, you would have to wonder about their own insanity. Right? Am I wrong in saying that? Because who in their right mind would want to stick around a guy like that. Fortunately, in my case, or at least I hope this is still the case, like I said, it's been brought to my attention that due to just a mix of certain things, this is causing a little bit of an unnecessary pressure point. Thankfully, in my case, I was fortunate enough to find someone who had a level of understanding in her heart, patience, kindness, and ultimately generosity, that she realized that the man she met was carrying some heavy damage. And boy, was she right. And I'm going to state this for the record, even though some of this may be interpersonal stuff I should keep to myself, but since this person came into my life, I found myself wanting to take more responsibility, to clean up my act a little bit more, to seek help for my troubles, to get back out there in the field. Whether I'm tracking down the latest UFO sightings or seeing if I can possibly triangulate the latest sightings near Bigfoot, or finding a haunted location. Somehow this woman saw through me. She saw through the act. Because I can be completely honest, I found out that she was a fan of the show Lucifer. She hadn't completed the series just yet. And when she and I started to get to know each other, I sort of mimicked Tom Ellis's portrayal a little bit, to show confidence, to keep her interested. And I figured it was a safe bet because I knew she was a fan. But ultimately, she saw through it. She realized who I truly was. And through her own little way, she was trying to help me realize it for myself. And even right now, I'm gonna just flat out admit it. Part of me feels like I'm not enough to share this level of gratitude. Part of me still carries those feelings of being unworthy, that I didn't deserve love. Though I'm happy to report that now, thanks to an interesting combination of a human therapist who, as I mentioned before, specializes with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and an artificial intelligence program that was recommended to me for when I had episodes of doubt, self-panic, and all that. And my schedule made it to where a meeting with my human therapist was a little difficult. There was something that was shared with me that I would like to share with the rest of you. And that is your romantic partners, the relationships you foster, your accomplishments, your reasons for getting out of bed. You should hold them as satellites, not lifelines. Because when a satellite, their light is still always there, they're providing information, they're providing direction. A lifeline, you're gripping on for dear life, and if either you or they find a weak moment, they might accidentally let go of the rope, and one or both of you ends up struggling big time. Satellites, not lifelines. I honestly fell in love with that remark. And even now, as I'm talking, I went to start to reevaluate some of the visions I would receive of ETs. Because I will state for the record that too much weird crap has happened to completely rule out the legitimacy of it. The notion that there's still love out there, even on your darkest days. That something would be willing to break all known logic and laws of physics to rescue you in your time of need. It is out there. It wants you to grow. It wants you to prosper. It wants you to become the best version of yourself, to grow, to not feel inhibited by life in itself. One of the oldest Buddhist teachings, the first Buddhist teaching, is that life is suffering. Being here, simply existing, you are going to find some sort of suffering. But ultimately, what makes it matter is the things you do with that suffering. Are you just going to sit there and wallow and drink and inject yourself with complete garbage? Or are you going to find some way to turn that around? To share your stories, to turn your feelings, everything that is making that pumping in your chest seem to feel so strong that it feels like your own heart is going to break through your rib cage. Are you just going to sit there? Because mind you, regardless of whether or not Olivia was some sort of mental hallucination, I have purposely seen, and it has been documented by multiple individuals, this so-called mental hallucination saved people from a possession involving a being some of you may know, called the Hat Man. Save an individual from a possession, save people from an attack that was so severe it put people in the hospital. It made some cough up blood. You can physically see someone lose their breath and see their neck constrict like some invisible force was choking them. Something about this vision not only saved me, but saved others. And what are you going to do? What do I want you to do with that information? Regardless of whether or not you believe me, the message behind Olivia is hope. Hope of a better day. Hope of love, prosperity, success in whatever you decide to make it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the only thing that is truly impossible in life is impossibility itself. And even now, as I stand here, I've fully come to realize that while I am thankful for whatever forces, psychological, extraterrestrial, angelic, that allowed for me to see Olivia, just like her and my grandfather said on that riverboat cruise when I was in Paris, I don't necessarily need their intervention anymore. They're more than welcome to pop by, check in if they like. If they find the time, they'll be more than welcome. But ultimately, as who I am, Dakota Franson, not as the specialist of the strange, not as the owner and founder of Bald and Bonkers, not as a writer or paranormal investigator or singer or any of that, but as I, myself, Dakota Franson, realize that I have to be the one to take the steps. Because much like I've said before, we cannot wait for the stars to fall. They fall all the time. We have meteors coming down all the time. Most of them just burn up in the atmosphere and never make landfall. Most of the ones that do make landfall are either so small they're practically dust, and you have to scour the ground with a piece of cloth and a neodymium magnet just to collect them. Because those big chunks of rock that come down, that make landfall, those meteorites, you have to understand, while they are incredible finds, you have to understand that when those stars come to fall, they will fall hard, they will hurt, and they will cause some damage. It was not necessarily the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, my friends. It's the fucking mess that the meteorite stirred up afterwards. So rather than waiting for the stars to fall, waiting for some miraculous vision, I want you all to look into yourselves. Ask the question, are we truly unknown, or are we truly just too scared to take action? Because yeah, the world's scary. It's always been scary. We just have a better grip on what's all going on. We have quicker updates coming to our devices in spite of all the efforts to suppress that information. Every single person on this planet, regardless of their shape, size, gender, sexuality, place of birth, skin color, physical afflictions, mental afflictions, has the chance to truly do something good, to truly make an impact in this world. And you know what? While I've poked fun at it, maybe that effort is through live streaming ghost hunts, creating random content for entertainment. If you find that suitable to who you are, do not let me stop you. If you find true joy in that, do not let me stop you. It is not my place to stop you, so long as you're not purposely trying to hurt anybody. And if you do end up hurting somebody, and those people are truly worth keeping around in your life, you make every effort to do right by them as best as you can. And if you have ever felt hurt by somebody, don't ever hide your feelings in not wanting to cause problems, to make things potentially worse. Because anybody who's worth keeping around, the second that you go to tell them something is wrong, the ones who are worth keeping around will do everything they can to be there for you, to make things right. You won't ever have to question. Something I'm telling this girl I've been seeing now is that I fully acknowledge that she has been, even on bad days, she has been a source of kindness, of love, unlike anything I've ever felt before. And how long we've been together is the longest relationship I've held on to outside of family. And I hope to keep her around in my life as long as possible, however that may take form. And I'm saying this Not because I'm expecting her to hear this, but because it's the truth. And I hope by saying this, someone else who hears this, if you're lucky enough to have someone like that in your life, where you really sit down and think and realize that anything you've seen as an affliction against you is nothing more than your own head getting the better of you. You take that opportunity to give that person a hug tight as much as possible in whatever way is possible for you to do, without completely smothering them, preferably. And you cherish them. Cherish what they brought you. Cherish the change, the light, the fire, the love, the passion, the consideration, the kindness. Appreciate it. Let them know that you appreciate it before it's too late. Do not let the heart become unknown, because that is the cruelest form of self-torture you could ever accomplish in this life. My name is Dakota Franson. I hope you all found some meaning in this. Like I said before, if you are struggling, there will be a link in the description for an international registry of mental health emergency related services for every country on earth. If you need it, please use it. Reach out to someone, a friend, your parents if they're still around, your grandparents even, brother, sister. Because ladies and gentlemen, while the world's insanity may make us feel like we need to isolate ourselves, that we need to take things on alone, human beings have survived on this earth for as long as we have because we worked together. And it's time maybe we remember that before it's too late.
We broadcast our thoughts into the ether, hoping someone, somewhere, is listening. But the true cure for this epidemic of isolation isn't just speaking into the void, it's sharing the signal. If this frequency resonated within you, don't let it extinguish in the dark. Follow our journey. Share this message with a world that has forgotten how to listen. I am Dakota Franson. And if you're ready to dig deeper into the echoes we leave behind, visit baldandbonkers.net. That is baldandbonkers.net. But this before we vanish back into the static, we must leave our mark. Until next time, keep asking, are we truly unknown?